So hi everyone, hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. I welcome you all to the second session of the Azure Devops webinar series. So thank you for joining with us. This session is done by TNTech Initiative in collaboration with DevOps Innovative. In the previous session, we went through an introduction to Azure DevOps, an introduction as a whole, and we discussed various features in Azure DevOps. So if you have missed the session, you can always go to our playlist on YouTube, which is in our 99x channel. So we will drop that playlist in the chat. We are planning to do two more sessions apart from this session for this webinar series. The session 3 would be about Azure infrastructure automation, and the fourth session would be logging and monitoring your production application with Azure. So hoping that all of you will continue with us until the last session so that you will get a comprehensive knowledge on Azure DevOps. So if you have any questions today, you can drop it in the chat, and at the end of the session, we'll be having a Q&A session to answer all of your questions. So the speaker for today is Heshan Jaisingh. Heshan is an associate technical lead at 99x. He has over 6 years of experience in full stack development. He has experience in taking ownership of DevOps activities and leading kickoff phases of projects. Therefore, he holds a deep knowledge in DevOps practices with Azure. So I warmly welcome Heshan to continue the session.
Thank you, Hanga. So I guess you all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So just a brief introduction about me. So I'm Heshan, and I graduated from Faculty of Engineering, Peradeniya, and I joined 99 next 2 years back, and currently working in the project NuCart for last 2 years. So today, briefly, we are mainly going to discuss about how to set up the pipeline and how to integrate the API and things into the pipeline and then into the Azure portal site. So let me share my screen and start the presentation. So I guess you can see the screen now.
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, so start the presentation here. Okay, so the topic is Azure DevOps, and going into the main components that we are going to talk about today is I have divided the main things into two parts. The left side, we have the Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is where you keep your repositories and or the source code like GitHub or GitLab. So you can have multiple projects in an organization, and you can have repositories there. So those repositories are where you push your code. So it's just a code repository. So this repository part, and then we have build pipelines there to build the code, and then we have release pipelines there. So this is one setup in the Azure DevOps side, and this is to manage the code. Okay, and in the right side we have the Azure portal. So this is where you keep your resources like SQL databases, your key wallets and app services, and your AD, and even the service principal. So I'll talk more about the service principal later. So just for getting an idea, so those are the two major components. One is Azure DevOps, and next one is Azure portal. Going into the next step, going into practical things. So we need to first create a resource group in the DevOps. So let me go into the DevOps. Hope you can see the screen as well now. So you can see the screen, right?
Yes, we can
Yes,
see.
okay. Thank you. So this is how the portal looks like, the Azure portal. So in the home page, you can see a few things like the recently used resources and things, and those are my previously used resources, recent resources. When you can see those major component like dashboards, resource group subscription, and um, this is the DevOps one, which was in the left side. So this is my organization, and this is my project. So inside the one project. There can be have multiple repositories, and you can navigate to the repositories from here. So for now, there's no repository, so I will be creating one uh, in the next minutes. So first, as the first thing, as the slide shows, I'm going to create a resource group, new resource group. So those parts I'm going to do from the portal. So even you can do this in automated way using Azure CLI or something. But for the easiness of the understanding, I'm doing this part from the portal. So you need to give a resource group name. So I'm giving the name webinar session one, and it's going to be my development environment. So you can have both fix as the dev now. Just like that, I'm going to create my test environment as well. It's test here. Okay, so you can see both resource groups are created. So those resource groups are like, let's say you are doing development and developers are currently implementation things and they need to do test in a kind of development environment. So we will be pushing all the resources into the development resource group now. And let's say the development tasks are done. Now the QA need to test them in the test environment. So we will be putting everything into the test environment, and then QA will be conducting the QA session. Just like that, we will be having prod environment as well for our live sites and live resources. So for now, I've been creating only the dev and test environments. So that's done now. And as our next step, I think you cannot see my slideshow, but I'll go to the slideshow. So we then need to create a service principal. So service principal is created in the Azure Active Directory. So I'll explain why it is there after creating the service principal. So how you create a service principal is going into app registration, and you can see that all applications and own application and things. So I'm going to create a new registration. That's how you create a new application. I'm going to name this webinar session 2 service principal dev. Okay. So you can see that this application is created. So that in this movement, what we call as application or service principal is the same thing. So you will be get to know why we created this service principal in the very next movement. So my next step is, as the service principal is created successfully, and I'm going to create and I'm going to assign roles to this service principal. Okay, so now things getting interested. So I'm going back to my home, and you can see my resource groups here listed down. And this is my development environment. So now you know that we cannot apply services, applies security and permissions to each and every resource or each and every user that use these resources, as we may be accessing those resource groups from the outside, maybe in pipeline as well. So because of that, we need to give those permissions to someone common, like an agent. So that's why those service principles come handy. So we can give permission to that service principal or the application that we just created, and we can apply those permissions into this resource group. So how it does is, I'm going to this resource group and I can go into access control tab here that I am tabbed, and you can add role assignment. So from here, you can select what is the role that you are going to configure here, right? So you have owner, contributor, reader, likewise. So the description is given just next to the definition here. So I'm going to go with contributor, as it is more than needed for my purpose now. So it tells that it grant full access to manage all resources, but does not allow you to assign roles in Azure role-based access controls. So I'm going to the next step. So I'm going down now. I have selected the contributor role, and here you need to select to whom you are giving the permissions, right? So for this resource group contributor permissions to whom, right? So I'm going to select my service principal here. What did I give the name? This one, right? Yes, this one. So what now it does is just after selecting here and assigning, right? So now once you go into the role assignments, you may see that you have assigned contributor role against the webinar session Monday resource group to this service principal of the application, right? So that means webinar session 2 service principal dev now have permission of contributor to access webinar session 1 dev resource group. I guess all clear. So if something is not clear, please raise hand or unmute yourself to ask questions. Okay. Okay. So now my next step is register resource provider. So this is kind of some step that has to be done once a new subscription is created. So going into subscription page, you can see there's only one subscription for myself. And in there, you have resource providers as I remember. Yeah, there, resource providers. So why this is here is if you are doing something related to SQL, it's like registration of services. You need to register Microsoft.SQL resource provider here. And if you are doing some web application deployment and things, you need to register Microsoft.web. So those things are not defaultly registered, but I have then manually registered those resource providers. Otherwise, your deployment task will be getting failed, right? So that's another step that we need to do. And then my next step is create a project and repository in the DevOps and pushing the API source code into there. So here going back to the DevOps, I have already created the project here, and now I'm going to create a new repository as well. Um, So my new repository will be named as my repository. I'm going to create it here. Right, so you got the empty repository with the README file. And so what I'm going to do is now I'm going to create the API from the Visual Studio. So I'm going to create a ASP.NET Core Web API. I'm going to choose the folder. This one. I'm going to name this API. I'm going with .NET 5. Other things are the default configurations, and I'm going to create this. Okay, so I guess that the project is there, and usual stuff is there like the solution and things, but I cannot see the ignore, so just let me create the ignore. And so the ignore is created as well. And then I'm going into the dash here. You need this. And I'm going to copy my repository URL here. So we have added the remote now, and we are going to add our source code, the commit message of initial commit, and push this into the master branch. Okay, so it is published now. Let's check whether the code is actually there. I think the branch is the master one, but here the main branch is set as a default one. So I'm going to the branches and set my master as the default branch. So once you go into the repository, now it's selected the master branch as a default one, and you can see the new changes are there, like the controller and other those basic stuff. So now we have successfully pushed our source code into the DevOps, and it's there now. So moving into the next step, it's connecting the service principal into the DevOps. So now I earlier mentioned that we are dealing with two main softwares now, two main softwares. One is the DevOps and other one is the portal. So there you need to create some kind of connection to connect those softwares, right? So those are independent softwares. So there's a way to be that given permission. So verify whether this DevOps code have enough permission to publish into the portal's app service or somewhere. So that's what I'm going to configure now. So you can do it going into project settings, and you can see service connections there. So from here, you can connect a service principal or the application that we recently created from the portal to here. So once that is connected, that means the pipeline also have the permissions that we earlier assigned to the service principal. So I'm going with Azure's resource manager option here, and this default recommended option, and here it will be listed my subscriptions into the drop down, and then I will be asked to log in to my uh, Microsoft account. Right. Doing so, we will be able to look what are the resource groups that available in the portal site. So I have created those dev and test. So you can see that connection is happened now. So that's why you can see those things in the portal getting reflected in the DevOps site. So now my target is this development environment with webinar session one dev resource group. So I'm selecting that, and you need to give the service connection name. As I cannot remember it, I'm going back to the Azure directory, and from the registrations, I will be able to see my service principal here. This one. So just summarizing what I did is we have earlier assigned this service principal, the contributor role to the resource group that we are dealing with. And now I'm connecting the same principal, service principal to the DevOps site into the pipeline. So the pipeline also gets the same permissions that we earlier assigned to this service principal, right? So that now this pipeline have pipeline or the source code have permissions of contributor against the resource group that we created earlier. Fine. Okay, so that's done as well. So now what we are going to do is we are going to create a build pipeline using a YAML file. And for that, I'm going into the project that I recently created, and I'm going to manually add the folder called resources. Sorry, not. I'm going to add the YAML file here. So you can go to the project, right click, add new item, and you can choose YAML here. And I'm going to name this YAML file as API.yaml. Yeah, it's created. And I have reconfigured a YAML file just because there's no enough time to create it here. Let me check for that. Yeah. Going to just copy and paste, and then I'll go to each in each step of this file. So this is my YAML file, and this is the steps that it need to build the project, like just do in the local environment, like what we do once we get a new repository or new clone into the local machine. What we do is I first need to restore my NuGet packages. Otherwise, those third-party libraries will be not registered or downloaded, and the build will be failed. Once then, what I do is I build my project, maybe clicking on here and build option, or maybe just running, just clicking on the running, so it automatically builds and publishing. So those steps are configured in a code way in this file. So I'll go through the in the through those steps. So my okay, the first step here, first thing here is there's a trigger for the master. That means this pipeline, once this file is integrated into the pipeline, it will only triggered once there's a change in the master branch of this repository, right? So you may have feature branches and everything, but I have configured here that this pipeline will be only triggered for the master branch changes. And then I have my VM image that where this pipeline has to be run and things. So I have selected Windows latest agent. And then I have a few variables. I'm not going to use this one yet, so I'm commenting this. And you can set build configuration like release or debug. So in deployed versions, we usually go with release. And then we have stages. So this is my build stages, and I have my first job here, and yeah, I have named the job as the build as well. And then under the build, I have I have mentioned few tasks here. So first one is restore NuGet packages, as I earlier explained. So you are going to restore NuGet packages for the solution, for this Webina API solution, and then you build solution. So this part is not necessary for now. Will be coming in the next steps. And then what I do is I publish those build artifacts. So the results of the build the steps into a predefined place like a build.artifact staging directory, right? So if you are building multiple APIs, what we do is we push them into a single location. So at the end, we can publish everything in this folder to the container, the real container. So that's what happened in there. So I have only one project here, and it has to be renamed here. So this is my project webinar.cs project, and this is going to be built and putting into a temporary place like which named as build.artifact staging directory. And then we'll be publishing everything in that temporary location to the content, right? So This is our YAML file, so I'm going to push this as well. Change and so I'm directly dealing with the master branch here, but you know that it's not the practice that we do usually. We go with feature branch and lately merge the things into the master, but because it's quick, I'm going with the master branch for now. And I'm going back to DevOps side, and in the repository, you can see the YAML file is there. Okay, so now I'm going to use this YAML file to create my build pipeline. So you can see that there are a few earlier pipelines there, and I'm going with a new pipeline, and I need to select where's my repository for creating the pipeline. So in this case, it's a Git repository, and I'm selecting this option, and from there on, I need to select the repository as, sorry, I select the project and then I need to select the repository as well. So as I remember this one, yes. So then you get few options like you can create a pipeline from the scratch. Like there are few options like you can create a pipeline for .NET project or for a .NET Core project or .NET desktop version. Likewise, there are a few options, but I'm currently going with using the existing YAML file for creating the show pipeline. And you need to give the paths now. So you can see that it's automatically selected because there's only one YAML file there with webinar API. Yeah. So I'm selecting this one. So the content will be loaded here, and you will see that everything that we coded there is loaded to here, and those steps are treated as pipeline steps now. So you can see that everything is there, and let's try to run this. So it will take some time because those are free agents that we get for free projects. And it's getting running now. So you can see that steps that I have defined in the YAML file are getting executed, right? So the restore NuGet package is currently running, and then it will be moved into the build, and then publishing API and things will be happening sequentially. Yes, nice. So it got success in my first attempt. So you can see the results going into the pipeline, and here. So you can see the artifact place like one publish folder is there. So moving into that, you can see what is there. So I can download this and then I can check what are there. Uh, So you can see that app settings files which we usually use to keep parameters is there, and my Swagger files, DLL files, and also the main file which is webinar api.dll is there. So right, so build pipeline is successful now, and we have created this flow up to the build position now, and let's move into next step. So if there are any questions or clarification to be asked before moving into the other steps, please ask. Right, so now you have the code and now you have your build artifact as well, but uh, what is the missing part is that still we haven't pushed this code or the build artifacts into the portal, right? So there has to be a way that create those SQL databases and app services or VMs that we need to host your web applications. So those resources has to be created, right? Uh, One way that you can do is you can simply go here and you can create SQL database um, with these drop-down options, or you can create app service using these interface. But what we do in commercial product is we do not create them manually, but we use a file called bicep or even ARM files. So you can automatically run ARM file or bicep file. So even using the pipeline, you can create those resources. So that is the step that we are going to cover now. So the build pipeline is done now, and I'm going to add bicep files and other necessary things that I need to create those resources in the portal site, right? So for now, I'm going to create a new folder here and I'm going to name it resources. I'm going to open this from Visual Studio Code. So here I need two main files. My first one is a bicep file. I'm going to name it as webinar.bicep, and my other file is the PowerShell file that I use to execute this bicep file. So there are ways even to directly communicate with the bicep file from the release pipelines, but with the limited time and the things, I'm going with the PowerShell file, so I can integrate the PowerShell file into the release pipeline, and from the release that PowerShell file, you can execute the bicep file. So my PowerShell file is publish dot this one. Right, so I have pre-configured the bicep file as well, so I will just copy and paste it here. And after pasting it here, I will go to what are the components and attributes that are there. Just give me a few seconds. Right, so going through the, sorry, I have pasted it here. This is the bicep file. So going through the bicep files, so this is where you keep your architecture or the structure of your resources. Okay, so I have defined as app service farm first. So talking about Azure, so you can use app service plan to host your web applications like API or function applications. So even you can have a app service plan where you divide the power of the app service plan among few APIs or function applications. So you can reduce your cost, right? So it's like, let's say that you are not using one API that much and it does not need that much power. So those kind of two APIs can be combined and hosted in a single server server farm, right? So for to host something like API or function application, first we need to create a server farm. So that's the step. And you need to create a SQL server if you're creating a database. And this is my SQL server. And you can define what is the admin's password and username. So I have just a hard coded simple password here. But usually what happens is you put those secrets into a key wallet, and then you retrieve it back once you create the SQL server, right? So this is my admin password and username of the SQL server, and you need to create the Active Directory type of admin as well. So only after that you can log in or give users in your AD to access the database using that AD accounts, right? So just uh, just memorize that you need to create Active Directory admin as well. So this is my SQL server, and this is not depending on anything. And then you need to create SQL database as well. So in this case, this is getting depend on the server, right? So it's DB or the database is hosted in the SQL server. So before executing this, you need to execute the SQL server creating part. So that's why it's getting depend on this one. So this does not execute till the SQL service getting implemented and created, right? So this is my database code. So it's just a very simple configurations. They are like database name, location, and what is the plan that you are going with this database. So those are my only components, and then you have the API, which is going to be hosted in the app service plan. So in this case, my name is, I have pre-configured few names, naming and things. This is depend on the server farm that I mentioned earlier, and my .NET framework version is 5. And yes, that's it. So you have configured bicep file now, and I'm going to put the content into the PowerShell file now. All right, so this PowerShell, what this PowerShell get as input is the resource group names, because I could not find any good practice to get the resource group from the pipeline. So I'm passing it as a parameter from the pipeline, and then I am executing this app as development group create with the template file as the bicep file I earlier mentioned. So I need to rename this webinar.bicep. And then you have resource group name. So simply that's it. So you have two files here. One is publish.ps file, and then this bicep file. Okay. So those contents are inside the resource folder now, and it will be reflected here. So in the YAML pipeline, then I'm going to do a change like I earlier commented this parameter. So this is my resource included folder parameter, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply copy the content inside this. Okay, so I'm going to do is I'm going to simply copy the content inside this resources folder to the temporary folder that I earlier mentioned, right? So I earlier mentioned that I'm putting the build content or the build artifact into a temporary location so we can push everything at one go at the last. So I'm pushing those files, those raw files into that temporary location as well. So at the end, from this task, everything will be published into the release stage. Okay, so resources, yes, it's matching. So I'm going to now push my new contents as well. We have the resource folder and we have edited the YAML file. Right, so what I'm going to do is no, just I just push this. Fine. So going back to the DevOps and going to the repository, you can see the resource folder now, and we have the publish.ts file and also our bicep file here. As the build pipeline, that means build stage is done now. Now we are going to release those contents into the portal site. Portal. So I'm going to create a new release pipeline. So there, hmm, so there, you need to first select what is the artifact. Like you need to do me seconds to rename this. Right. So first you need to select what is the artifact that you are using in the release stage, right? So you have selected, it has automatically selected the project here, and then um, I have to select what is my project that I have built. So in this case, my project is this one, and so everything that has built in the build stage for this project will be loaded here as artifacts, right? That's what I just did. And from here, what you need to do is I just disable it for now. And now what we need to do is we need to execute that PowerShell file, because that's where that bicep file execution is included. So I'm going with Azure CLI task. And now that service principal communication is coming into the party, like there's no way that we communicate in between those Azure portal side and our DevOps side. So that's why we have earlier configured the service principal. So now we can select the service principal to communicate between those softwares. Now we need to select what kind of script that we are going to run as well, and then we need to select the script path. So you got it's you can see the build artifacts here. This is my web application with some kind of chunk name with the s.zip, and then you can see the resources here, right? So this is the file that I'm going to need here, and I'm selecting that file to be executed in the release pipeline as my first step. And I'm I'm expecting a parameter here as well. So my parameter was resource group name. So I'm giving it as a pipeline argument, and my resource group is this one. Fine. So I guess everything is right there. And I'll just do this. Why is it? Why it's not giving my permission to save this? It's already saved, right? Okay. So it seems saved, and I'll just verify it with refreshing this. No, no, it's not there. So let me create it back. Create it again. Okay, so we got the release pipeline first stage, and in the first step, what it's going to do is execute the publish PowerShell file, and you just need to give the uh, variable again. Right. So I'm going to save this. So let's try to create a release and check whether this getting executed correctly. You can see that release 1 is getting started there in the new release pipeline, and it's using the build artifacts from the last stage, and it's queued for now. And once the agent is released, it will be starting its deployment tasks. So if there's anything to be resolved at this point, please raise your hand and unmute and ask the questions. So here in our resource group, for now, there's nothing. And if this gets successfully executed, we will be able to see the resources inside that. So this usually get few at least 1 to 2 minutes. So we have to wait. So just going to what are the steps that getting executed. So it has a predefined task to initialize job and downloading artifacts, which we create from the build step. So that is already executed, and those steps we do not have to add manually, but they are automatically added into the release pipeline. So that's executed now, and that the major step is now executing, like the creating resources in the portal, into the portal side. And so it usually takes some time, and it usually takes a bit longer time once it's successfully executing. So I'm happy about that, though it's getting few more time because I guess it is executing correctly. So you are there, right? So is there anything to be clarified? Please ask questions.
I think Keshan, I think if there's any questions, I think we can ask at the end of the session.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. Okay, okay. I just got bored looking into this console.
Yes.
So that's how it behavior, I guess, with those free agents that we get for free projects. So it usually takes some time. So I have to wait to get in this execution because only once the app service created, I can push my API into the app service. So this is kind of mandatory step that we needed to wait till getting executed. So it already has passed near 4 minutes. So let's just wait for a few seconds. I guess that's almost done now. All right, maybe till this getting completed, I will be talk about the branching strategy that you can use. So what I did till up to this moment is I directly communicate with the master branch from here. But you know that that's not the safest way. Like we put our original content or the production ready content into the master. So what we can do is we can easily create a feature branch here with this command. You can give like webinar feature branch. So then you can push this branch uh, into the DevOps. And you know that we earlier configured that our triggering mechanism only to limiting to the master branch. So doing this will not be affect our pipelines, and no pipeline will be triggered by another or a different branch other than the master, right? So going into branches, now I will be able to see the new branch there. Yeah, so the webinar branch is now there. So what, oh, it's getting, is it getting, maybe I may have done some mistake. So what we can do usually is once you do some change or feature development, what you do is you push into your feature branch and then you raise a pull request here, just like what I'm doing. So you can select your feature branch here and here, and I'm targeting my master branch here. As this, there are no changes in between those branches for the moment. It shows that there are no changes. So once there's change, you can raise a pull request, and once the pull request is merged, then as the master branch get to change now, the build pipeline will be triggered. Okay, so okay, so I got another thing to be taught today. So I will be doing that as well. That's how you manage the pre-deployment gates. So I'm going to demonstrate that part as well till that resources are getting generated. So this is my release pipeline with the build artifacts here. So one thing that I need to do is I need to trigger the release pipeline once the build pipeline is completed, right? So at the moment it's not getting happening. So how I do is I can go click on this icon, and you can have this toggle button where you can enable your continuous deployment. So once this is enabled, once the build stage is done, it will automatically be triggering the release stage as well. And another thing that we need to do is, let's say we have three different environments here, dev, and then we have the sorry, test and prod environment. Let's say we have a stable production environment and we only need to push our new code into the development and test so we can test our new features inside those two environments. But we need to keep our production without getting any harm with the new features. So just imagine that there are three um, stages. They are like a dev, test, and prod, right? So let's imagine then that this is the prod environment. What you can do is you can put a pre-deployment gate here. Mm, yeah, so you can see that pre-deployment approval they are right. So as this is getting executed automated way, if we do not put any gate and we do not have any limitations, the code will be pushing into all three environments, and even if there's anything wrong with our new feature, the production environment will be also harmed. So what we can do is we can enable this, and you can put someone to approve the new changes. So in this case, I'll just put myself over there. So now once this is enabled and saved, release deployment stage will be not started till I come here and approve the change, right? So yes, this is done now, and thankfully I'll go to the resource group here, and this is my resource group, and I'm going to refresh the things there. Yes, you can see the resources, right? So this is my app service, this is my SQL server, this is my SQL database, and this is my app service plan. So what I'm going to do now is, as we need to publish the API into here, I'm going to add another step here to publish my API. So this is app service deployment task. Azure app service deploy. Yeah. So this is to deploy my API, and I need to do these things again like earlier, and I need to select the app service that I created in the portal. So in my case, this is the one that I created through the bicep. This one, webinar API dev. So I'm going to select the same one, and as it is the only one, so only that one is getting listed in the drop down, right? So I'm saving my release pipeline, and I'm going to, I'll just disable this task as everything that uh, put into responsibility over this task is done now. Because it takes some time, I'm going to disable it and save this. And as I have uh, connected the release pipeline and build pipeline, now I'm going to commit new change. So the release pipeline, build pipeline, and everything has to be executed in order. So I'll add here. Change. Okay, I'll go to the step of that pull request as well. So I'm pushing into this branch, and then I'll raise a PR, and then I'll approve it. Then let's check whether things are working as we expected. So now I'm going to raise a PR here. So create a PR, selecting this one. You can see the changes that I have done. I have opened the Swagger for non-development modes as well. So that's what I'm going to merge here, and I'm going to raise the PR. And in my case, as I'm the only person that in this project, so I'm going to come in to approve this and complete the PR. So now things are getting merged into the master branch. Yeah. Mm, I'll just squish this and completing my merge. And things will be merged, and let's check whether the pipeline is triggering now. Yeah, you can see that master branch is changed, so the pipeline is getting evoked as well. And once the build pipeline is done, then we will be moving into the release pipeline, and the newly added step that which to publish the API code into the app service will be executed as well. So just wait a few seconds or minutes, and even we can check and verify whether our pre-deployment gate is working as expected. Once this is completed, we'll be going into the release stage. Right, so it's done. Going into the releases, you can see that is the release is holded, right? So approval is pending on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going into the uh, this approval interface, and I'm going to approve this release. So the release pipeline will be invoked now. So there's only one step at the moment because I commented or the disabled that earlier steps. So it will be running and pushing my code into the app service plan. Then let check whether it's actually there hosted. Yeah, so it's done as well. Let's check it from the portal. And I'll just go into this app service, and so code has to be pushed into here, and let's check whether it's working as well. So this browser, and I'm going into the Stacker here. Stacker one. Mm, think, but it's not correct. Just let me resolve the URL. Yeah, it's here. So you can see that it's correctly published, and this is our weather forecast API, and just run the default method here. So you can see the results as well. So that's how the API is deployed here. So this is our API, and we have created few other resources like databases and things as well, but there's not enough time to show me how the database is connected to API and how the data is getting likewise things. So those data that I show, just the data that put it in here in the default controller. So this is a dummy list. So that's getting return now. Yeah, so I think this covers almost everything that you need to know when you are configuring a project into a production level using DevOps and also Azure portal side. So that's almost everything from my side, and you can ask questions and clarify things if I was not clear in any stage. Yeah, thank you from my side. Thank you.